Two questions we often get at GameDriver, which are how do we move faster and when or where do we start doing automated testing? And if you look at the modern development lifecycle, it's not surprising that this can be confusing. In traditional development, we would have planning followed by development, followed by testing, followed by release. But in the current landscape of development, we have an endless loop of seemingly parallel tasks that feed on each other. And so it's difficult to be able to make process changes effectively without disrupting the entire process. So to answer this question, imagine that we're introducing any sort of features or changes, and we have three factors to consider. We have time, cost, and quality. And the problem is we can only choose two. If I want faster delivery at a reduced cost, for example, this means we have much less focus on quality and low test coverage in each release. Essentially, we're moving so fast that we never have time to test everything. And this means we have very low quality in general because we're always rushing to keep up with the latest. If we want reduced cost and increased quality and coverage, this takes much more time to deliver. Effectively, we want to get everything done before we put it out the door so that we can move on to the next release. This is most often the cause for delays. If we want high quality and fast delivery, this tends to be much more expensive because we need to increase the number of resources that are behind testing, including the people and the environments used to achieve the work. There's also a diminishing return on how effective or how much improvement adding more resources can be to any development process. So what do we do? The answer is to reduce the scope of changes into a much more manageable amount of features and changes for each and every release. Next, we need to automate testing and the execution of those tests from the CI so that developers get immediate feedback rather than waiting 1 or 2 release cycles before they get feedback on a release, which causes a context switch and can prevent developers from being most effective. There's a lot of studies that show the later you find a defect, the higher the cost of resolution. And finally, we want to remove all dependencies, both internal and external, from the equation. This includes testing environments, it includes people even. So the less that we need to rely on individuals or environments to do the testing, the more effective we're going to be in achieving our results. The next question we get is, where do we start? So taking a look at Fowler's testing pyramid, the idea is that the lower in the pyramid, the greater the number of tests, also the faster execution time and the lower the cost. Now, unit tests, which are written by developers and executed at build time, test discrete pieces of functionality, such as a player controller's inputs and the expected outputs. Integration tests are when we start to put these things together. So we have different components of the puzzle that are working together, and we can understand when one thing is doing its job, how do the other components behave? And finally, we have UI testing, or in this case, play testing, which is performed by individuals. And these are often the most time-consuming and the most expensive tests to run because we need to run these on real hardware with real people. And last I checked, a person can only test one game at a time. Now, the current approach would have us test all of these things with each and every release. The reality is we have different teams in the organization using different tools. And so the amount of reuse between teams is very low. We have very poor test coverage because we're always trying to keep up with the latest release, and continuous testing is simply an afterthought. So we still end up doing a lot of things very manually here, and there's a lot of gaps. The ideal solution, we would have a common set of tools for greater reuse and efficiency across teams and stages, which allows for increased test coverage, faster time to market, and higher quality overall. This, in essence, is the GameDriver way. Our tools allow teams to start during unit testing by adding GameDriver automated tests to their code, to build integration tests from examples from development, and then having end users execute tests as part of their play testing that are run on real hardware in parallel so that they can achieve a much greater degree of efficiency than if they're performing those tests manually. Our customers see a much higher test coverage as a result. which gives them faster time to market and a much higher quality product in the end.